Well, good Saturday morning. I hope things are going well for you today. I wanted to send out this for next Thursday's discussion at the Mission School of Ministry. I just wanted to explain this kind of verbally before you did it. We're going to look at two things on Thursday night. One is salvific space in the midst of waters. We're going to come to the text and see, okay, how many stories are repeating these themes. And we might illustrate this just by this drawing, repeating themes, leitmotifs, if you want to understand it, redemptive historical, or some people call this Heilsgeschichte. And what you have is you have a telling of a story, and then you retell the same story only with different characters. So think of it this way. Adam is conquered by the fruit of a tree. His nakedness is exposed. The result is curse for his offspring. Noah is conquered by eating fruit, and then his nakedness is exposed and curse comes to his children. You think of Edom, who's kind of the new Adam. He sells his birthright for one meal, and the result is just misery. And so you have a series of new Adams. Abraham's a new Adam, Joseph, Moses, David, and then ultimately Jesus. And so what you have is exile from God's rule. The kingdom of God is God's people in God's place under God's rule. That's what Graham Goldsworthy's helped us see. And when you don't love God enough to conform to that, you're kicked out. And so you're looking for the guy who can get you back in, and it doesn't happen until Jesus comes, and he is the new Adam, is able to create love enough so that people will love the Lord their God with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength. And so Jesus and the new Eve are the perfected new Adam and Eve, and they'll never be kicked out because it's been set right. And so what we're going to do is take the model of that repeated themes, and we're going to look at salvific space in the midst of water. So think of the rakia in initial creation. Think about salvific space in the midst of waters in the story of Noah. And I want you to carefully read all of that. And you might just know that the word ark in Hebrew there is tebah. And it's the only other place that word tebah is used is Moses' basket. So you almost have the salvific space reduced to one person in the Moses story. You may want to read the Moses account too when you do the ark. Of course, this is the crossing of the Red Sea. Red Sea, Reed Sea, we're going to talk about that. And ask yourself, how is the Red Sea like creation? And then again, we have the crossing of the Jordan with Joshua. And how is that a recapitulation of the crossing of the Red Sea? And then we have again Elijah and Elisha splitting the Jordan. How is that connected? And then we have Jesus and his baptism. And when we look at all the parallels, they tell us that he was baptized at Bethany beyond the Jordan. That's the exact same place that these miracles are happening. And then Revelation 15:1-3, there's a crossing there that happens and people singing the song of Moses. And of course, that's going to happen after the crossing of the Red Sea. So I want you to read through all those, and you're kind of taking this model. How are these stories repeating, and ultimately how is it related to Jesus? And so salvific space in the midst of waters, it should be a great study for you. And then And let me just copy these. We'll copy that. Then we're going to jump in really hard story. Under this theme, is the Bible anti-woman? And we're going to look carefully at the details of the rape of Dinah. And I want you to read that story very carefully. I want you to ask why things are happening, what does it imply after things happen, and just dive into that. And then I want you to come and read the story of the rape of Tamar in 2 Samuel 13:1. And what you're going to see is that many of the details in the rape of Dinah's story under this Heilsgeschichte, they're happening again in the Tamar story. And I want you to ask yourself, how do these texts line up? This is the pagan nation that is destroyed, and then, how is this story retelling the earlier story, related to the earlier story? And then, lastly, even though this is an Old Testament hermeneutics class, I want you to go to John 4, because, it is one Bible, and God is the ultimate author of the one Bible. There's a story of Jesus and the woman at the well, and this is a story of women who are abused, and kind of what happens as a result. Jesus comes to a woman who's abused, and there's something that happens in this story. And when we realize that Shechem, which is where the Dinah story happens, and Sychar, which the name means strong drink or something like that, these are exactly the same place on a map. So how is the Jesus story related to the rape of Dinah and the rape of Tamar? And it should prove to be a pretty interesting study. I encourage you to work through this, and I really look forward to our discussion on Thursday.